Welcome back to another episode of the Education for All podcast. I'm your host, Hannah Chang, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very special guest, Mrs. Denise Boiko. Mrs. Boiko is a veteran homeschool mom, teacher, college counselor, and the author of Homeschooled and Headed for College, Your Roadmap for a Successful Journey. She homeschooled her own children from kindergarten through high school and has spent nearly 2 decades teaching biology, literature, and composition at various homeschool academies. Since publishing her book, she has also helped guide more than 200 students and their families through the college admissions process. In addition to teaching and counseling, she frequently speaks at homeschool workshops and seminars, supporting families as they navigate the homeschool journey. So, Mrs. Boiko, thank you so much for joining me today. It's so great to have you on the show.
Thank you, Hannah. I'm delighted to be here.
Thank you so much. Before we dive into homeschooling itself, I'd love for our listeners to get to know you better. Can you share how you decided to homeschool your own children?
Sure. Now, it was a long time ago. It was back in 1993. Homeschooling was still rather new, so there was not the resources we have today. But I knew a couple people from church who were homeschooling. I really admired the thought of that educational choice. I had also heard a couple of radio broadcasts. That was the days before podcasts. So on the radio, I had heard some broadcasts telling, success stories or how to do it. So I thought this would be a good way to do faith-based education without actually enrolling in a private Christian school. And I figured we could start with kindergarten and see how it went, first grade, and just take it 1 year at a time. So that was how we got started, was through the influence of others and through hearing and a little bit of education about it from the outside.
That's so wonderful to hear. Thank you for sharing your story with us. I love how your homeschool journey grew year by year and how you really were able to infuse faith within your educational approach that reflected your family's values. It's so wonderful to hear how it really became such a meaningful and rewarding journey for your family. And over the years, you've had the opportunity not only to homeschool your own children, but also to teach and mentor many other homeschool families. So what led you to become a teacher and later a college counselor for homeschool students?
Yeah, I didn't intend to become a teacher. I was looking for an academy for my son. He was going to be, I think that was the year he was going to be in 10th grade. My daughter was already starting her very first year of college. So I was looking for outside classes for him because it was the time when he should be in some outside classes. So I called up this one, or maybe emailed this one academy that I had heard of, and chose some classes for him. But then the director of that program asked me if I would like to teach biology. And I was a little bit taken aback, thinking to myself, I can't teach other people's children. I'm not a teacher. But then I sat in on a class and it didn't look too hard. I figured if I just would get organized and break down the material week by week, stay a week ahead of the students. And I was a biology major, so I had a biology degree. So I just, again, tried it 1 year at a time. That year went really well with biology. And then the next year I added English because I was already tutoring or had just started tutoring someone in English and writing. And I started using some of those lesson plans for a classroom application. So that was how the teaching got started. And now it has been 20 years now, because that was 2006 school year when I started. Then I believe you also asked about college counseling, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That started a little bit later, but not that long later. In 2009, I published my book, Homeschooled and Headed for College. And there was a lot of research that had to be done to get that 400-page book, ready. So I felt like I had a lot of background in that. Once the book was published in 2009, I started being invited to speak at little, smaller gatherings, homeschool groups, but also some local homeschool conferences. And then with that, some people started asking me for one-on-one help. And so that started maybe around, 2010 or so.
That's so great to hear. Yeah, it's amazing to really see how one opportunity led to another, from teaching at a homeschool academy with literature and biology to writing Homeschooled and Headed for College, and eventually to counseling students through the college admissions process. It's so wonderful to see and hear how God has used your experiences to really equip and encourage so many families.
And, it started starting the homeschooling, I was afraid, nervous, whatever. Starting the teaching, I was afraid, nervous. The one-on-one counseling, like, what do I have to offer? I don't know all of this. but just, you get more comfortable with it the more you do it. And people are
Yes.
so kind. They don't expect perfection. We do with our best, and then we grow in our abilities.
Mhm. I love what you shared. Yeah, really growing through our experiences. And, as we learn through it and extend grace to ourselves, we can really see that progression. So that's wonderful. And since you've experienced homeschooling from so many different perspectives, you've seen the way it can support a student's academic and personal growth. So I'd love to begin by discussing why homeschooling can be a good fit for many families. Can you share the benefits of homeschooling and why families might consider it?
Yes. And there are many benefits. I'll just hit the high points and then I'll go back into each one a little bit. But one would be the individualized learning. We'll come back to that. The flexibility of curriculum. You can mix and match curriculum. Supporting students that have diverse learning needs is homeschooling is excellent for that. And then integrating your family values and faith is another big piece of the puzzle. So with the individualized learning, not every student learns the same as their sibling or their friend. Some students need to be up and down and running around in those young years and not confined to a chair in kindergarten. Found that to be true with my son. So, just individualizing, we're learning, and he gets to be running around the room at the same time. And it's going in. I knew it was.
Mhm.
So you can customize the teaching to the type of learning that student appreciates best. And students who might have learning challenges, you can customize to what's the best way of input, verbally or by reading or by hands-on. All of that can be customized to the better learning of the student. And then the fun part is you can just really flex with the curriculum. You can choose to go to a co-op or academy, so you get a couple days out of the house every week or not. You can choose curriculum from different publishers instead of just having to be in a school where they just choose the publishers for you. You can use a flexible calendar or holiday schedules, summer schedules. You could do year-round homeschooling. You can merge academics with real life. I've known people that do the traveling and hands-on, volunteer work as part of their course curriculum. Project-based, hands-on, literature-based. There's so many ways to approach it. And it's just a huge spectrum that can just light up those parts of the brain for different students. And then I mentioned supporting students with diverse learning needs. Parents can work with their students together for the best practices and can give breaks during the day, can extend deadlines, can avoid busy work. You go to a traditional school, a lot of the work is busy work to keep the students quiet and give the teacher some sort of thing to evaluate them with. Well, a parent at home does not need all that stuff. So a student with learning challenges probably doesn't need to do every single problem in every single page or every single handwriting example. There's different ways to get the information and learning across. So
Right.
it's flexible that way. You can focus on the real world. So with students with diverse learning abilities, some real world stuff can be just very, very fruitful. And you can probably most of all, the parent can be there with encouragement. And the student can learn in an environment that's free of comparisons or peer pressure or even bullying, things like that. So homeschool can open up that whole avenue there. I can pause a second before I talk about the faith thing if you had comments on those.
Yeah, I really love what you shared about the flexibility and individualization that homeschooling offers. As you shared, it really allows families to tailor each child's education to their unique needs and the way they learn best. Like you mentioned, if a student is gifted, they can move ahead, or if they're navigating challenges, learning challenges like anxiety, OCD, or ADHD, families really have that flexibility to adjust pace and approach to really best support that student. So,
Yeah.
yeah, so wonderful.
And then as I had mentioned before, for us, the faith-based education was very important. So that might come in the form of choosing a faith-based curriculum where there's little sidebars and boxes about, say God's creation or Bible verses that illustrate a concept. Or if you're just using non-faith-based curriculum, you can still incorporate Bible study or devotional as part of it could be a whole subject for the year, or it can just be a devotional at the beginning of the day, prayer in the middle of that day when you're doing when things are tough, you can just stop and pray.
Yes. Hmm.
Um, Talking about issues from textbooks, especially in the high school years, but I think these days it's down into the elementary years, where if there's things that do not align with your faith and they're popping up in some of the textbooks, you've got the ability just to pause and talk about those things in the home environment. It's a safe environment. You can go to scripture and see how that aligns or does not align, and help the student navigate so that later they can use those tools themselves. Like, let's see what the Bible says. Let's see what maybe the downside of this issue would be. So you've got that open discussion and communication available, parent to student, families and siblings, even teachers to teachers. So it's and the other thing, you can also join support groups and academies that do support that faith as well, and the students can make friends with like-minded fellow students.
Wow, I especially love what you shared about really infusing and integrating faith into education. Especially for Christian families, it's so important, and homeschooling provides such a beautiful opportunity to weave these biblical truths into everyday learning through, as you mentioned, curriculum, Bible study, and really teachable moments, even if a curriculum doesn't align, for families to thoughtfully discuss ideas from a biblical worldview.
Mhm. And
So
let
thank
me
you.
add one more important benefit of homeschooling is independence, learning to be independent in in
Mm.
your learning. It's not being spoon fed to you. And this really reaps a good harvest in college. I remember during the pandemic, I heard more than one story of, okay, college classes, they're going online, students are not in person. And a couple of the former students I had, they really rose to the occasion, and the professors were very impressed by how they just kept going and kept navigating their
Mm.
education. They did not drop back. They did not lose out. They knew how to learn on their own. They knew how to navigate their textbooks, the resources, the materials, the lectures. And some of the other students who had just been high schoolers in traditional schools did not have those tools. So, yeah.
Wow, that's so wonderful. And I love what you shared about how homeschooling really allows for you to really dig deep into your knowledge and really go layer and really dig deep on one thing and really just be able to really independently kind of navigate that and really learn through your own way. So that's so wonderful. Yeah, there are so many wonderful reasons why homeschooling can be such a meaningful choice for families. And once parents decide to homeschool their children, they start beginning to explore how to build a program to help their children thrive. So, my next question is, how do families actually build a successful homeschool program?
And that's a wonderful question, because that's the thing everybody wants to know. Well, how do I do it? I see the benefits, but how do I do it? So first is homeschooling is probably not for everyone, but it can be for almost everyone. But the students that would thrive best in a homeschooling environment would be students who are able to learn independently, or at least willing to learn how to learn independently. Self-motivated, curious, maybe they have a natural love of learning already, and open to learning, even if it's with their parent as a guide. Sometimes it can be a little bit tough to have a parent guiding the student. There might be friction, but there's ways to get around that. I like to listen to a podcast called what was it called? Homeschool in high school, or homeschool high school, something like that. But they're always saying there is no one right way to do homeschooling, which is true. So families will adjust it to their own needs and desires. But just in general, what you'd want to do is you'd want to look at different models and educational styles. There's actually quite a few of them, probably almost infinite. So some people use traditional textbooks, and that's probably easy. It's easy on the front end, just okay, order books and go. It can be a little more challenging if the student gets bogged down in a textbook approach, and if that's not for them. Some people do the classical method, which goes back to the ancient trivium of grammar, logic, and rhetoric.
Mm.
And you might read a lot of great books. You might learn classical languages like Latin. You might also focus on virtues and character through the classical model. Some people love to do a hands-on or project-based homeschooling, especially in the younger years. But it can also be a great thing even during the high school years, where some real-world stuff or some 3D, some creating a website or doing an art piece that delves into history of something, or doing a project that's based on literature where you really have to study that piece of literature to do well on that project. So lots of people like hands-on. Some people like literature-based courses where you're not so much doing a textbook, but you're reading maybe historical literature and analyzing that. There's online courses, there's community college courses for those that are ready. There's home designed courses, so a parent can literally design their own from pulling together resources from various websites, books, even library books. And then a student can even lead their own course. My daughter designed a Shakespeare course. She was a junior in high school, and she had about 6 fellow peers. And my daughter had a study guide, she had a video series, and then they read a series of Shakespeare plays. They discussed them. The students wrote essays, and she graded them. um, and it was a very good experience, just designing her own course. Um, Other things new homeschoolers might want to delve into is, are they going to join a group like a PSP, which stands for private school satellite program, or are they going to do their own paperwork and be a what's called a PSA, private school affidavit? And those, that's a topic for another time. But how will you document your homeschooling? And so you might need to abide by a certain calendar if you're doing an outside program where your courses will be overseen or approved, I guess, maybe at the beginning of the year. You will turn in your grades to the administrator, but they will create a transcript later, for instance. So depending on how much oversight and admin you want over you, or if you want to do yourself, that's a decision. Um, any question on the academics so far? Because I'm going to go on into socialization and so forth as well.
Yeah, I just want to briefly highlight and point out some of the things you mentioned. One message I really love that you shared is that there isn't really a right or wrong way to homeschool. As you mentioned, homeschooling really offers the flexibility for families to build a program that best fits their children's needs, interests, and goals. And then I guess kind of a follow-up question I had is how do parents kind of get set up? I'm more interested in the PSP aspect of things with PSA.
Mhm.
How do families and students kind of get set up with that?
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, depending on what state you're homeschooling in, we're in California. But first, you can just start talking to people you might know already who are homeschooling, and they might tell you about what programs are available in your area. And if that's the case, it's as simple as contacting that program and getting set up. There are articles online and probably webinars and things about how to do your own PSA documents. Some people sign up for online schools that are actually the school that's going to continue, that's going to keep your records. Sometimes it's a little bit tricky if it's in a different state from yours, so you have to kind of look into some of those things. But I think, there's a bit of research online that a person could do if they don't already know some other homeschoolers that can walk them through. But yeah, in our area, we're fortunate to have a few different PSPs to choose from, and it's not hard or bad or wrong to do your own document either. You just have to make sure you're going to give your school a name. You're going to set graduation requirements if you're at the high school ages. You're going to have to keep good records for a transcript, and a lot of the colleges are they get homeschooling more and more. They understand. Okay, you administrating your own homeschool. Okay, tell us what you did. So yeah.
Great. Thank you so much for sharing. I think a lot of families, especially myself, I'm also really interested in how does the PSP kind of setup and program work for getting started. So thank you for sharing that. I guess next I wanted to kind of discuss the role of parents as well. So what role they play within homeschooling and advice to parents who are just beginning that journey.
Yes, and it can be lots of trepidation and fear when you start out. Can I really do this? Am I, this is the imposter syndrome. I'm not a teacher, I'm a parent. Parents know their students more than anybody else does, so that's going to help as you pick curriculum and activities for the student. So early on in the young years, parents are pretty much going to be the main teachers. Students will probably be at home when they're very young. Um, But by middle school and certainly by high school, it's natural that the students should be taking some outside classes. They'll be wanting to, you will be wanting them to. There's going to be specialized courses that you can't necessarily do easily at home. So the parent becomes more of a facilitator at that point, a person that helps talk to other people. Oh, what class is being offered this year? Where can I get a community college class in this subject? Is there good online courses? How about this curriculum? So being connected in a support group really helps at that point. But there's plenty of online information as well. So the parent becomes a facilitator and yet doesn't take a back seat entirely at this point. Even if the student's going to an academy once or twice a week, they're still homeschooling. So the parent needs to make sure that the work is being done or help the student with any struggles or obstacles that come up during the week, help them communicate with the teacher if the teacher can help. So the parent is still more like a coach and a helper, and definitely an encourager as well. The parent should be the one that sees the big picture as well, because you might be taking a course from an academy and that teacher doesn't necessarily know what your goals are. So, if your goal is to be veterinarian and you're taking this particular biology class, it's the parent that knows, wow, the student has this goal. What else are they going to need? And so they might have to do a little bit of research on, well, what other biology, chemistry, do you need volunteer work with animals, et cetera, et cetera. Then the parent, in some academies, the parent is the person that assigns the grade as well, depending on the academy. Some of them will give the student a grade. Some of them will just say, here's what your student did and how they did. You give them a grade. So sometimes it's the parent doing the grading. And then ultimately for college applications, the parent will be the counselor. And they will do the counselor role, like transcripts, counselor letter, and other related tasks on the college application. So ultimately, the parent is responsible for the homeschooling arrangement, but you can get lots of help. And the student is also quite capable during high school years of reaching out and looking around for courses that they want to take, or curriculum that they like, or maybe creating their own course. So the student becomes more and more capable. The parent becomes the facilitator and big picture person, and ultimately the counselor at college time. So I do recommend that parents try to find 1, 2, or 3 support groups for different purposes, maybe for college prep purposes, maybe for just, prayer and encouragement purposes for parent to parent, maybe just simply for socialization where the students get together for park days, field trips, special events. Parents get together, share ideas, share curriculum ideas, and you can pick up a lot of tidbits in support groups, that's for sure.
Wow, that's wonderful. I really appreciate how you share the changing role of parents. Early on, they're often the primary teachers, but over time, they become encouragers, mentors, and really facilitators as the students grow in independence. And then parents also take on the role of a counselor for their child during the college admissions process. And then I love your reminder that families don't have to navigate the homeschooling journey alone.
Yeah.
Like you mentioned, parents are free to join support groups and homeschool communities, and the students can also find socialization and build friendships, develop leadership skills, and even become really actively involved in their communities through, as you mentioned, different activities like youth groups, volunteering, maybe even sports as well. So you shared, yeah. You shared such an encouraging perspective on what homeschooling can offer families. At the same time, we know that every educational path comes with its own challenges, so I think it's helpful to discuss those as well. So what are some challenges that families may encounter while homeschooling?
And you can imagine that when people think about homeschooling, if they're not homeschooling, their biggest first thing is like, I could never do that. They'll meet somebody who's homeschooling and say, I could never do that. Or people sort of joke and say, I would kill my kids. Okay, that's pretty violent. But so yeah, the challenges that come up, there's misconceptions for one thing. So some people assume right out the gate that the social skills of homeschoolers are going to be lacking. And so that's like their one thing. Okay, I'm not going to do that. My kid will not have good social skills. That's actually not true. Arguably, homeschoolers may have better social skills because they're in the real world. Some people think it's too hard to homeschool, too hard to get all the materials together, too hard to keep it up every single year. Some people think it's not worth it. Some people worry that their students are going to have gaps in their education. So all of these are they're misconceptions. There's grains of truth to them, of course, but there are ways around it. Again, support groups, online forums where you're going to get ideas. There's a wealth of information and coursework available online these days. You don't want to be entirely online, but there's a lot out there that are going to help you get ideas. So, but actual challenges that are not a misconception is there will be days when there's going to be difficult parent to student interactions. I experienced it in my homeschool, and some of those days were very, very rough when the student was angry, or I was angry, or both of us were angry, and the student didn't want to do their work or just wanted to do something else. There were some very tough days, but looking back, I don't think it was any worse than maybe some of the challenges you might have if your student is in a classroom and facing peer pressure, again, demands from a teacher. There's bullying on the campuses. And so there's going to be challenges with any educational choice. That's just the way it is. And so it's, well, what do I want to do? How do I want to progress through the education? So the daily frictions, loneliness, it is a thing. There's going to be seasons in the homeschooling when maybe there's not a lot of face-to-face classes that year, or the student's in an in-person class but doesn't quite fit in with the group of students that already knew each other. That can be tough. Again, that's something you navigate at a traditional school too. I mean, I remember some extremely lonely days. I went to public school. Some extremely lonely days, most of ninth grade, when I just felt like I didn't have any friends. So you're not immune from the loneliness just because you're in a public school or a day school, right? Anxiety about college or career. So some families worry about that a lot. Some people worry about it only a little bit. Some people don't worry about it. But again, that's something where the more information you have, the better off you are. And getting that information as early as you can in high school and adding and building to that information will help you feel more confident. And of course, talking to other people who have been there. And then sometimes the difficulties are just logistical, like we need an American history class this year. I cannot figure out where to take that class this year. This academy is not offering it. This academy is too far away. This academy is on Eastern Time, and it's 3 hours off. That might not work. This one conflicts with something else that's important. So sometimes it's just a logistical challenge of how are we going to get this one particular class this year. And so that's why sometimes it's good to take a class that you'll eventually need to take when you see it offered. Sometimes in high school, like, oh, you're eventually going to need American history. Doesn't matter what year you take it, but here's a beautiful opportunity in ninth grade. Let's do that one. And then, so you have to be able to flex and shuffle sometimes on some of these. Another challenge is balancing homeschooling with family responsibilities, especially in families with lots of other children. Although in families with lots of other children, many times the older students help a lot with the younger ones, which is a beautiful thing to see. So again, it can be addressed with good time management, lots of lists. Make sure you're making your lists and your reminders, and look at the day's task and the week's task. You might not be able to get to all of them, but let them prioritize, and the highest ones rise to the top. Multitasking. I did lots of multitasking while homeschooling. I might fold laundry while giving a spelling test, for instance. So you can double up on lots of things. And just lowering your expectations, I think, on some of the housework was also a thing. So those are some of the challenges. I mean, there's more big and little ones, but those are some of the ones people meet up with.
I see. Yeah, thank you so much for your advice, Mrs. Boiko. This is a wealth of so much information. I think it's really reassuring for families to know that while homeschooling certainly has its challenges, those challenges can be met with thoughtful planning, preparation, prioritization, and then, like you mentioned, really extending grace to ourselves if we don't meet our kind of expectations for that day or that week. Homeschooling really gives families the opportunity to grow together through the experiences you mentioned, like balancing family responsibilities, working through moments of frustration together on a specific day, or even helping students navigate questions about college. And I love also what you shared about how families can, like with students and their curriculum, they can really find a class and really take that class when the school offers it versus waiting to later to take that class. I think that's really important. And then as students move through high school, one of the biggest questions many homeschool families have is how to prepare for college. Since you've guided numerous students through the admissions process, I love to hear your words of wisdom on this. So for homeschool students who plan to attend a university, how should families prepare for the college application process? And then the second part of my question is, are there unique aspects that homeschool students should consider to present themselves as strong applicants?
Yeah, those are great questions. And those are some of the biggest questions people have when they talk about homeschooling through high school. Some people are comfortable, okay, stop by middle school or stop by high school, but you're just getting into the good stuff when you homeschool through high school. So I would say preparing for college and college applications, of course, a rigorous course of study, making sure that you're taking the courses that, I guess, the highest college on your list, the most selected college on your list, taking a look at what they want, right? And gauging your courses to them so that you don't fall short or have a gap. But I think just educating yourself on what colleges are out there, what colleges are you interested in applying for, and start looking at websites, maybe do a couple college visits for colleges that are nearby or colleges that you might visit on a vacation. Talking to people who have been through it as well, veteran homeschoolers, etc. And parents should keep good records. So you might not need every piece of good record that you keep, but you've got all your course descriptions. Keep the grades, of course. Start keeping notes on your homeschool philosophy that can go into a document later called the school profile. What is your history of your homeschool? What is your school philosophy? How do you set up your own personal homeschool? So keeping notes on that is going to help later on. So the documentation and understanding the requirements is one big part of the puzzle. The unique things for homeschoolers, probably the biggest thing is the parent will be the counselor. So the parent will keep the record so that they can write a couple of different documents. The transcript is one, unless you're in a PSP that will do that for you. The counselor letter is another one, which is a recommendation letter on the part of your student. That's an important piece. So the parent will want to thoughtfully, keep notes on it, but keep notes on what other people are saying about your student so that you can contribute to that letter. The course descriptions, a paragraph or two about each high school course, is going to be extremely useful at college application time. And then the other little piece that might be a small bit different from traditional students is we live in a world where, not a world, but we live in a environment today where most colleges are actually test optional for SAT or ACT. But there are a few who do require it. For homeschoolers, though, test optional, it would be good if the scores are good, it would be good to submit those scores because colleges still have that little bit of wonder in the back of their mind. Okay, was the course rigor sufficient that this person will thrive at college? And the test scores, while they don't tell the whole story by any means, would give that extra bit of assurance that the student has grasped a solid amount of capability. So if your SAT and ACT scores are decent, I would submit those. And that's different from the traditional student who's like, they say it's optional, they don't need it. Okay, I won't submit. So those are some of the things that are different.
That's wonderful. Yeah. Thank you so much for just sharing how, colleges really evaluate homeschool applicants and the importance of building a strong transcript and really keeping good records all throughout the years of high school, and just really keeping clear documentation of that. I guess as you know, a teacher yourself and teaching English, I wanted to explore the importance of developing strong writing skills during high school, especially in preparation for college.
Oh yes, that's really important. Not everyone's a gifted writer. Not everyone is can be published or high things like that. But strong, clear writing skills, I believe, should start no later than ninth grade. So good training in analysis. So not just creative writing where you're writing a story, although that's kind of fun to practice different style techniques, and those assignments can be dropped in here and there for variety. But taking a piece of literature, for instance, or a piece of nonfiction, an article or a speech, and actually dissecting it, delving into the themes or the techniques that the writer or author is using good vocabulary as you describe these things, crafting a solid thesis, solid topic sentences, and good evidence with quotes from the piece that you're working with. All of these things go together to make good habits, good training, and solid education in constructing essays. So I think lots of practice from ninth grade on is, in my mind, it's a must. And again, some people might say, well, I'm going to be an engineer or computer programmer. I don't think I really need all that. But clear writing, even business writing, does follow some of these things too. You're going to have a main idea and you're going to have some evidence. So you don't want to ramble all over the place. So keeping our writing reined in and to the point, and then depending on how long the piece is supposed to be, we can expand. But every person should hopefully come out of high school with a strong writing background. Again, some people will be off the charts wonderful, and some people will just get, clarity and clear communication. Well, clarity is clear communication. Clarity and strong vocabulary would be what we could aim for. But yeah, I agree. Highlighting that, underscoring that is very important for the high school years.
Thank you so much for sharing the importance of good writing and how to develop those skills early on through ninth grade and even beyond into senior year as they prepare for college. I also wanted to explore a little bit on the same topic of writing, how homeschoolers can thoughtfully incorporate their homeschooling experiences into their personal essays.
Mhm. Right, because colleges are interested in knowing how did the homeschooling work, how was it set up, and there's there's probably two extremes to avoid. One extreme to avoid is never mentioning it at all in your college application, like pretending you weren't even homeschooled. That's a little bit of a problem because they'll see the name of your school and maybe it's got a name and it's a private school and it's very small. They might not know, well, what is that school? So if you can show them the features of your homeschooling, just slip them in here and there, little bit of a mention into an essay, some mention in your activities list. Parent, of course, will be writing the counselor letter for private colleges. But the other extreme to avoid is all the stereotypes, all the cliches of homeschooling. Oh, I did homeschooling in my pajamas. Oh, I had a 30-second commute to school every day. All of those things, we've heard them all. I mean, they were cute and funny at the beginning of homeschooling, but they're very tired cliches now. So instead, you want to show, because you were homeschooled, you had the flexibility of time or flexibility of creative effort to design your own course or to teach a course and take the course at the same time, or to take several community college courses, or to do travel related coursework. So show how you're homeschooling, maybe more volunteer work, maybe okay, going back to the veterinarian thing, maybe you had a business with dog walking, and then that evolved into taking care of some exotic pets, and there was a incident with a slight emergency with the animal, and you were able to help get the animal the help. So some of those things that because you were homeschooling, you are focused in on some of these activities or ways of doing coursework that perhaps you couldn't have done in a traditional environment. So you can mention those things in the course of an essay without, you know, laser focus on homeschool this, homeschool that. I would also say, as you're describing bits and pieces of the homeschooling, it's good to assure your reader that you had plenty of opportunity for teamwork, group classes, types of group projects, things like that, because one remaining fear might be that you always did things solo, and instead you want to show that you did do some things in classwork. So we just drop in the thing. In my biology lab group, we stared under the microscope and couldn't believe what we saw. So they're seeing you working with other students. Or in our literature small group, we hotly debated this versus that. And so then they'll sort of breathe a little bit more easily, saying, okay, this student has been around other students. They're not just isolated up in their room doing math, English all day long and then get let out at night. So you want to show that you are social, learning as a team, but you have some unique opportunities as a homeschooler that you were able to do.
Wow, I really love your really encouragement for students to really be creative about kind of their homeschooling and really pursue their genuine interests and really go deep and kind of layer those interests, like leadership opportunities, working in groups versus, being doing things independently or solo. So I think the experiences they become even more meaningful when students definitely invest deeply in what they enjoy. And then again, I love your advice to weave homeschooling naturally into application essays through authentic stories and experiences rather than, making it the main focus or reinforcing stereotypes. I think your advice truly reminds us that preparing for college is more than just gaining admission to the university, but it's an opportunity for students to really develop their knowledge, character, and confidence that they can carry with them through college and beyond.
Yes, you've said it very well. Yes.
This has been a truly fruitful and informative conversation. We've discussed the benefits of homeschooling, how families can build a successful homeschool program, some of the challenges they may encounter along the way, as well as how homeschool students can confidently prepare for college. So before we close, I'd love to take a moment to reflect on your own personal homeschooling journey. Having been a homeschool parent, educator, and college counselor, what has been the most rewarding part of both homeschooling your own children and helping other families navigate the homeschool journey?
Yes, I mean, for my own students, it was just so gratifying to see them get into the colleges of their choice, get the degrees they wanted, and be out really contributing in the working world. Actually, just today, my daughter texted me and said it was this meeting, this international meeting, it was on Zoom, I'm sure, of such and such scientific this and that and this and that, because she's into medical research. So at this meeting, they said, um, oh, Julie was homeschooled by an editor, and she was able to cut down her 8,400 word article down to the required 4,500 words. So we were laughing about that. It's like, was that environment or genetics? But it was just fun. I mean, they were acknowledging she was homeschooled by a person who happened to be editor. So it's just like your students going out into the world and knowing that you had a small piece of that. With other people's students over the past 20 years, I love the light bulb moments when a student or a small group of students or the whole class suddenly realize something, and the knowledge goes in, and everybody just realizes the fun or the interesting, feature of that piece that they just learned. Seeing students participate in discussion or having fun in lab, and just also keeping in touch with students that I've had forever ago, by text or email or sometimes in person visits, is very, very gratifying. And just seeing them go off in college and career and then keeping in touch has been really awesome. So it's a great job.
I especially love what you shared about those light bulb moments in the classroom when students suddenly understand a difficult concept or engage deeply with great literature and really grow in confidence. I think it's so wonderful to hear also how you've kept in touch with your students even after they've left your classroom. And then I love what you shared in the beginning about your daughter, and I'm sure she's a great writer, just just like you are. And yeah, it was a really fun story. So thank you so much for faithfully teaching, counseling, and investing in so many students and families over the years. I know you've made a huge difference, and I'm grateful that you've been able to share your wisdom and experience with us today.
It's been a joy. I'm so thankful for you for inviting me, Hannah. Thank
Thank you
you.
so much. Mrs. Boiko, it's truly been a joy speaking with you, and I hope this conversation has encouraged families who are considering homeschooling or are already on that journey. For our listeners who'd like to learn more, please visit the homeschooling resources listed in the podcast description, including Mrs. Boiko's book, Homeschooled and Headed for College, as well as other trusted homeschooling organizations. Mrs. Boiko, thank you so much again for joining today. It's been a blessing to have you on the podcast.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you so much.